This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our 9th consecutive Victory Green Hour as the Philadelphia Eagles struggled and came away with a 22-16 victory over the Carolina Panthers. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Connor Donald, here on the Kelly Green Hour. What's up, Connor?
Oh, my laptop just did a massive update, and as you know, I've been struggling to get the show going, and now I don't even see us on the screen. So even better, but that's okay. We are here, and yes, you're right. It was not pretty, but at the end of the day, we got the W. A W's a W, although the A.J. Brown comments and now the Brandon Graham comments that just came to light about 10 minutes ago have things becoming a little more interesting.
Before we jump into that, as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJRL54. And follow the Eagles Pinpool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and wherever you get your podcasts at Eagles Pinpool Network. And then if you're joining us live, let us know your thoughts on everything in the comments. The game, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown. And let's start off with quickly with the Brandon Graham comments. So Brandon Graham, he's been around long enough to where he should know that you don't say stuff like that in the media, especially in Philadelphia. A team that's 11-2 just clinched a playoff berth, a win away from clinching the NFC East on a 9-game winning streak. And we have this going, especially after what happened last year when they lost 6 of their last 7 games. This has all the likings of Donovan McNabb and T.O. from 20 years ago, 19 years ago, the 2005 season when T.O. and Donovan, when T.O. was looking for a new contract, Donovan didn't really speak out for him. He spoke out for Brian Westbrook, but didn't speak out for Donovan. For T.O. Now, this isn't a contract-related thing, but, Elliott Shore-Parks asked A.J. Brown in a post-game, in the locker room post-game yesterday, what are the issues with the offense? And A.J. had one word: passing. Watching that game, there were – now, I know on Friday we had a discussion, a lot of comments about Jalen Hurts' passing ability, the way Jalen's been throwing the ball, the amount of yards, this, that, and the third. I don't have an issue that he threw the ball for 108 yards. My issue is it seemed like he was gun-shy throwing the football to AJ, to Vontae. There were the second play of the game, A.J. Brown wide open down the sideline. Could have been a big play, if not a touchdown. That is my issue right now with the way Jalen is playing the quarterback position. He did good things. He didn't turn the ball over. He hasn't really turned the ball over much. He's turned it over twice during this 9-game winning streak. He's held on to the ball way too long. He has taken a lot of sacks, and he is not just letting it rip. Do you think that the coaching staff or somebody got into his head so much about turnovers that that's affecting the way he plays the quarterback position? And what I mean by that is he's not going out there and letting it rip. He's too concerned about throwing interceptions. So instead of throwing the football, when it's a tight window, he's going to hold on to it. He's going to either run or he's going to just take the sack. Are you concerned? You think that's an issue with Jalen right now?
There's something in his head for sure. Like, I don't know if it's that somebody got to him or all the mistakes that he made through the first 4 weeks made him this way, but it doesn't feel like it's been through this entire 9-game stretch. It really only feels like it's been over the last 2 or 3 games. And like you said, we talked about, we want to see him throw the ball. We want to see him show some confidence. We don't need to see him throw the ball 30 times. We need to see him throw the ball and throw it well, especially against this Carolina Panthers defense, which the Carolina secondary, credit to them, played fairly well given the circumstances, but Jalen Hurts made them look a lot better.
I was going to say, did it seem like they played well because Jalen wasn't throwing the football? Because there were multiple times that the receivers were open downfield.
Because we've seen him over this 9-game stretch, at least maybe not in the last 2 or 3 games, but prior to that, uncork some really good throws. When A.J. Brown's one-on-one, he throws it to him because he knows there's probably maybe 1 or 2 guys better than him in man coverage one-on-one. And I think I dropped the stat yesterday that against man coverage, Jalen Hurts' completion percentage is one of the best among quarterbacks in the NFL. So I don't know what has changed over the last 3 games where we were just brushing it under the rug as, oh, he's just, it's the run games are working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And unfortunately, it honestly seems like something's up. And I mean, like, you can get past whatever tech. Yes, we're kind of talking about it right now. Did you guys see what BG said? Even if something has changed between Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, you should be able to continue to maintain a professional rapport. And if people actually watched the Brandon Graham clip in its entirety and not just took the quote and then just started tweeting, then you would know that he goes on to add those points in where it's like, these guys are definitely able to work through this. They should be able to work through this. They're grown men. They're professionals. They just need to sit down one-on-one, air it out, and get it together, as the season rolls on, especially towards the playoffs. Because we've seen A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts be on the same page professionally. We don't know personally what the relationship's like beyond what Brandon Graham said. But, I mean, before this, you talked about it. A.J. Brown has had some of the silentest 100-yard games you're going to see in an NFL season. And now suddenly he says passing as a response to something that needs to improve. And Brandon Graham adds this element to it. And now it's going to become a big hoopla because the national media, there was some, FS1 was running with it as there's a problem. And then there was guys like Dan Orlovsky and the ESPN crew who were kind of brushing it under the rug as that he didn't need to throw. These things happen. If you're winning, you're winning. Don't worry about it. But now this is definitely going to make it a point that they were going to need to probably start to see a passing game going forward, even if the run game's what's working. I just hope that they don't overcompensate for the train wreck that's occurring in the media right now.
Yeah. It's bad. It's such bad timing too. Like, you have a big game against the Steelers coming up. A win and you clinch the division, like you have a shot at the number 1 seed. And like I mentioned before, like, all this is happening around the same time that the collapse started to happen last year. We would hope that this team, the leadership on this team will not allow this to happen. It's just weird because 2 weeks ago in St. Louis, AJ and Jalen did the Fresh Prince and Jazz celebration, the Will Smith and Jazz celebration for Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Jalen is the godfather to AJ's daughter. So, like, who knows? Maybe it is that they have to work on the professional side of things. But things were great 2 years ago. Obviously, they had a tough year last year. And AJ, missed a couple of games this year. And he hasn't had double-digit targets in, like, a month and a half or 2 months. So, obviously, as a receiver that is expecting to get the ball thrown to him, and when he's open, he feels like all he's doing is running cardio out there. I mean, it can be annoying. It can be frustrating at times. I've always been of the ilk. It doesn't matter what happens as long as you win the game. Now, I also think that AJ is not necessarily saying this thing, clamoring for, 15 targets a game. I just think he wants more than 100 passing yards in a game. Excuse me. So, like you said, hopefully they don't overcompensate. Obviously Saquon Barkley just broke the Eagles' single-season rushing mark. He's 483 yards away from breaking Eric Dickerson's mark, and he is the kind of the lifeline of the offense right now. But if a team were going to be able to slow, excuse me, man, being sick sucks. If a team were going to be able to slow Barkley down, will they be able to trust, or will Jalen Hurts be able to take advantage and get the passing game going?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. And a part of me feels like there's enough men in the locker room, like a Saquon Barkley, who's been so unselfish. He's just been having such a historically good season. And you have to believe that there's men enough in the room that they're going to be able to say, AJ, Jalen, let's sit down. Let's talk through this. Let's get on the same page. We need you guys on the same page going down this backstretch, because we've seen them be on the same page and be so good. Like I said, we've seen that, like I think I just tweeted, that we've seen them be one of the best, if not the best, quarterback wide receiver duo in the NFL when on the same page, healthy, playing really well. And that it can get back to that level. There's a part of me, because of what Brandon Graham said before we came on the air, before what Brandon Graham said about 10 minutes before we came on the air, I was brushing it under the rug. I was kind of like, okay, let the media go with what they're hearing and what they're thinking. They're going to do it anyways. But I don't think there's a huge problem, because we've seen some good passing games this season. We've seen some games where Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown have each had great individual games, great games combined. But now there's a part of me that still wants to kind of brush it under the rug a bit, because the past 3 weeks are probably not what we truly are going to see from this offense constantly. It's just been pure domination on the running side of the football, like me and you, even going through these Sunday, way closer game. And maybe that's what it is. It was a game that they felt they should have dominated. It ended up being a way closer game than expected. There's some frustrations, and they're boiling over because they're like, why didn't we win this game by more? And A.J. Brown's like, if you passed the ball to me more, if you saw me when I was open, we would have won this game by more. Like, I don't know if that's what's going on and going through these guys' heads right now. When you face a bit of adversity, people start throwing each other under the bus and making ill-advised remarks to the media. I mean, there was nothing wrong with A.J. Brown responding the way he did. He was asked a question. He answered. It was very straightforward. There was no elaboration. And but part of me knows A.J. Brown knew people would run with it. A.J. Brown's a smart guy. He knew when he made that comment that this media was going to run with it, and he was going to get exactly what he wanted out of it without saying more than one word. So I'm hoping I'm going to sweep it under the rug a little bit. Am I completely not concerned? Absolutely not. But I think you can get on the same page and the right page and right this wrong, but I don't think it comes at the cost of completely taking Saquon Barkley out of the football game or throwing the ball 30 or 40 times, because we've seen that happen in the past as well. He can throw it 30 times. A.J. Brown will get 10 or 12 targets and have his 200-yard game, but it's likely going to end up in a loss, because we know when Jalen Hurts throws the football more, he is way more likely to make mistakes. But the Jalen Hurts we're seeing in throwing 21 pass attempts, and he was gun shy on pretty much all 21 pass attempts, that is definitely not the Jalen Hurts we're used to seeing and need to see either.
Remember 2022, he was ripping it and gripping it and, throwing all over the field. Remember last year when the Eagles started 10-1, it felt like after every loss, it was just like they weren't having fun. That's what yesterday felt like after the game. It was like a somber win. It felt like a loss. And obviously the comments coming out of the locker room, the comments in the in the press conferences, that's what it felt like. It felt like a loss. And then now Brandon Graham's comments today, that's not good. Like, you know what the topic of conversation is going to be tomorrow on sports radio, on ESPN, on all these sports shows. It's going to be that. It's going to be what Brandon Graham said.
It blew up, man. Because as soon as that one video dropped, my phone, my Twitter X lit up with just Dan Orlovsky, John Clark. Like everyone was just throwing their 2 cents, and it was all, well, this isn't good. This isn't great. That's not what you want to see, because there have been a lot of people who have swept it under the rug and kind of defended it as, you know what, they haven't had to throw the football. So why bother rewriting something and potentially causing your own implosion by changing a script so dramatically? And it seems as though they do need to change the script by a little bit. And I'll be interested to see, what more Nick Sirianni has to say, because funny enough, Nick Sirianni spoke to the media just before this entire clip dropped and finished making all his comments. And then the timing of this clip, it's like, why couldn't Nick Sirianni have been up there just like half an hour longer answering questions? Because 100% he would have been faced with that, and someone would have played that video for him, and he probably would have been like, what is Brandon Graham saying? And Brandon Graham also has his spot tomorrow on Philly Talk Radio, again, WIP. And some people are already commenting, is he going to walk it back? Doesn't matter if he walks it back, because he's already done the damage. So it'll be interesting to see what the rest of the week looks like now.
We already know what they're going to start off with him tomorrow. And Sirianni's also on the WIP morning show tomorrow. At least that's what he normally is on Tuesdays. So like that's going to be the topic of conversation. Before we jump into the game,
Tex says we need with Sirianni, Hurts, and AJ.
Man, first Sirianni and Hurts couldn't get along, and now Hurts and AJ. If all this is true, what I'm kind of hoping is that we're not reading too much into this, and like maybe Brandon Graham met from a professional relationship. They're not there. They're still friends, obviously, off the field and whatnot. But like when it comes to professionally, it's been tough just because of how close they are. Usually, like if you become a coworker or become, I hate to use the word boss, because usually the quarterback position is the most important position in sports. So you're kind of like the leader. Excuse me. As a quarterback. So if you have a best friend who's a receiver, then, they're like, hey, feed me the ball. Feed me. I want it. And when you're not getting it, you might, do a side eye towards the quarterback. And I don't know what's going on, but we're 11-2, and we had during this run, it's like we have these high expectations. We think we have a chance at the number 1 seed. We think, we have a shot at the Super Bowl, and now this is starting to feel like last year where we'll get to the first round and Washington or Green Bay, whoever it is that we face, they're going to come into the link and beat us, and it's going to be last year all over again.
And the irony that, it happens when the odds of them getting the number 1 seed are almost near completely slaughtered by a Detroit victory over Green Bay on Thursday night. And then you have this hard-fought war against – and no disrespect to the Panthers at all, because they gave the Kansas City Chiefs an extremely hard run as well. So, but was Philadelphia's tight game self-induced in a way? Kind of, because the offense really had the slow start, couldn't get going again. Then this whole – like Jalen Hurts – did not want to throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field. He preferred the check down. He preferred, just throwing off to the side, not throwing more than 5 yards down the field. So, and that created this circumstance where things got weird. To me, it's not the circumstance has set up really an ugly situation. I do want to touch on It's a Wrap Sports Network, because I don't want to pretend like we're ignoring your comments. He says the Eagles and Hurts have attempted 325 passes, only 42 have been in the field, middle of the field. That's 93% of the offense using the sides of the field and only 7% of the middle. Go ahead and try to propaganda that away and continue to sell the Hurts as an elite QB narrative.
I don't think we said he was an elite QB.
We welcome to the show, because this is clearly your first time dropping in. Have never been he's an elite QB. I don't know if I don't think I've ever talked about him in the vein of like a top 5 quarterback. I know there's better quarterbacks than Jalen Hurts. I know he is not the elite of the elite. Can he make great plays? Can he do some great things in the, craziest of circumstances to pull out wins? Yes. And we've also seen him be very costly to us in losing games. Just look back at the first 4 weeks. He probably by himself cost us a couple of those games because he had averaged 2 turnovers a game during that time period, 2-3 turnovers a game during that time period. I don't think we've ever gone to the point as a show, the Kelly Green Hour, and ever said that he was elite.
2022 probably, but
I mean, he had like an MVP caliber season that year, so of course we were talking about him in that vein then. But since the last year's collapse, since the first 4 games this year, we definitely haven't been talking about him in that vein of the elite QB narrative. There's some who definitely speak in that way and think that he is an elite quarterback. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he can make some great things happen because he is very, multidimensionally very good. Hopefully it's just a case of the yips right now where he's just afraid to pull the trigger, because if you've watched the Eagles over the last 2 seasons, Jalen Hurts has never really been afraid to let that ball rip in a one-on-one coverage situation with Devontae Smith.
Even earlier this year.
AJ Brown. And AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, for all intents and purposes, are best one-on-one on the sidelines. Look at some of Devontae Smith's best catches. They are on the sideline, toe tapping, just barely getting his feet in. So I understand. I do get the middle of the field part. I don't think the amount of times you throw to the middle of the field makes you elite or not elite. First of all, that feels like you're taking a very small sample of how a person plays and turning it into an argument that this guy's not good because he doesn't use the middle of the field. But it'll definitely be, it'll be interesting to see how things continue to go. He gets paid $1.6 million a game. That's a pretty expensive yip. I mean, if you watch the Eagles in 2022, he earned himself a contract extension, and how he had to pay out the contract extension at the end of the day. And he actually, thank goodness, how he paid the contract extension when he paid the contract extension, because if he waited 2 or 3 more quarterbacks to sign, he'd be a lot more than a $1.6 million per game cost. He'd be well into the $2 million, and the discussion would probably be a whole lot more different as well.
I will say one thing, like, people are talking down on Hurts because he doesn't throw the ball as much, doesn't have as many passing touchdowns as some of the other quarterbacks. And you would expect that, but passing touchdowns and rushing touchdowns still count the same. So in this 9-game stretch, he's got 20 touchdowns and 2 turnovers or something like that. So he's still getting the ball into the end zone. He's just not doing it in the conventional quarterback way, which obviously going into the playoffs, when you're going to face better teams, they're going to do their best to take away Saquon Barkley. And if they take away Saquon Barkley, it's going to be up to Jalen Hurts to try to win the game or try to throw the Eagles to a win. Is he going to? Obviously, that's what we're going to see in a month. But until that point, something in the locker room isn't right now, and they need to figure it out.
He says it's a symptom of a bigger problem. The Eagles don't trust him to run the Kellen Moore playbook. We did say that Kellen Moore's playbook with Jalen Hurts has definitely looked different. And obviously Kellen Moore's kind of playing to his quarterback's strengths and the offense's strength. But ultimately, like, how many more times, how long can you lean on a purely Russian game and this defense to continue to win you games? It almost lost us a game, and we only put up 22 points. Me and you both had this game like a 30-17 game for the Eagles. And it never really got to that point because the Eagles' offense was never able to do. The defense did their job, but the offense was never really able to move the ball that confidently.
And the defense didn't actually play all that well. This wasn't their best game either. And it is getting to a point that they're fortunate with the teams that they have faced. But like this week, if you start slow, there's a chance that the Steelers could jump out to a two-score lead, and you're not going to be able to rely on Saquon Barkley. And Jalen's going to have to try to throw them back into a game, and will he be able to? And that's going to be the big question. That's going to be the big test. So I'll be intrigued to see. I don't know why they haven't been able to get the offense going early at all this season. Like, I feel like the best offense is up tempo. So maybe they should start the game up tempo, start the game under center, so that they can. If you're going to hand it off to Saquon, he has a running start. You can do play action from under center, and that is where the offense has been best going into the second quarter. So hopefully, they figure that out, and it starts this week. But again, it's bringing me back to what BG said. I just can't. I'm just thinking about it. Like he said, they were friends. What does that mean? They were friends. Are they not friends anymore?
You know that they're all going to have to answer questions. They're going to ask BG to elaborate. They're going to ask Jalen Hurts about it. They're going to ask AJ Brown about it. And will someone actually tell the truth? I'm not 100% sure, because it sounds like it's more of a personal thing than a professional thing. And you don't want to air, personal laundry out for this Philadelphia Eagles media, because then they're just going to run with it. And I mean, like we saw, how a certain writer wrote about Joel Embiid and brought his, brother's death and brother into it, and the death of his brother. Like you can see where like this Philly media could go and turn something personal into something completely unnecessary and not even related to football. And so I don't know if you're ever going to get the truth or a further statement about that. They may, in a way brush on it and say, things are fine with us. They're going to come out and say they're hopefully come out and say the right things to push the media away. The media is definitely going to run with this, and they're going to be like vultures on this for the next till Sunday for sure.
And if they lose, and depending on how Jalen Hurts plays Sunday, it could continue to go on.
We hope not, Tech. Hurts will be passing the ball, quote, unnecessarily, end quote, this week. Guaranteed.
Well, I think it wouldn't shock me if AJ Brown has 15 targets this week. And we know like the Eagles don't throw the ball that much. Like Jalen has averaged 20 to 22 passing attempts in the last month or so, and it wouldn't shock me if most of them go to AJ this week. And you have to kind of remember, was it last year after the Vikings game when AJ kind of went off on the sideline, and he said he wasn't really yelling at Jalen, but he went off, and then that's when he started his streak of 5 straight 125-plus yard games. Maybe it happens again this week, but well, man, the rest of this week is going to be – we can't have anything nice. Like 11-2, just clinched the playoffs. They're on a 9-game winning streak, and this comes out.
This is a victory green hour. This is a playoff clinching green hour, and we are forced to talk about people not being able to just hold their tongue and enjoy what is happening. The media was going to run with this narrative of the passing game with or without what BG said. And now BG just took this narrative it's going to a whole nother level over the next 48, 72 hours.
All right, let's jump into this game. It wasn't fun to watch. The Eagles won 22-16. They started out slow. We mentioned Jalen had 108 yards passing, but net passing was only like 83 yards. Not good. They did run the ball for 209 yards. The Panthers have played a lot better lately. Obviously, taking the Chiefs down to the wire, taking the Bucs to overtime last week. Bryce Young, since coming back from his benching, has played very well, looking like the number 1 overall pick. After the Eagles punt it, speaking of that, on that 4th and 8 play, are you surprised that Sirianni decided to punt instead of A, going for it, or B, kicking it? And I think we have a kicker problem. Jake Elliott has not been the same. He's 0 for 5 from 50-plus yards. He even missed an extra point, but there happened to be a penalty, so the Eagles went for 2. We have an issue at kicker right now, and I'm not saying you sit Elliott, but the Eagles should definitely be thinking about bringing some kickers in just in case, putting them on the practice squad just in case.
Yeah, I think, Sirianni spoke about it tonight. They still have all the faith in the world, despite what me or you or the fans might think. But this was a guy that you used to be able to, remember that Giants game? It was a 61-yard field goal. It was one of the longest in Philadelphia, if not the longest in Philadelphia Eagles history. Year. And he went from a guy who we almost could trust to be automatic from 50+ to a guy that has yet to hit a 50-yard field goal this season. It is a problem. It is not good, and it is a problem. So I'm going to be really interested to, see. I don't know if we have a problem, but we need to be able to have faith in this guy to hit from 50+ again. You have to be able to. I mean, kickers altogether are getting a bad rep this season because things have not been good for a lot of kickers, including Justin Tucker, and teams are trying to stand behind them. But you can definitely tell now when it's a 4th down and the field goal range is 50 to 60, there's a chance we're going to be going for it a lot more for the rest of the season. And this will really show us if Nick Sirianni was true and honest about what he said in his press conference tonight, because he seemed to be more than faithful in standing with Jake Elliott and letting Jake Elliott kick his way out of it. Although there have been other circumstances leading up to this where he did not let Jake Elliott kick it and go for it on some weird 4th downs that we question. So it'll be really interesting to see. I don't know if we have a kicker problem, but it's certainly not an enjoyable kicker circumstance to watch. So no, I was not all that surprised.
He was so dependable from almost anywhere on the field.
Exactly.
And now he was struggling. Quentin says he tweeted us something I saw that was actually pretty funny in regards to AJ Brown's targets this week. Good one, Quentin. That was good. So going back to the original question, are you surprised that he punted it? It was the right decision, obviously. Avonte Maddox caught it at the 2-3 yard line. And then you got to give Bryce Young a lot of credit, he moved around really well in the pocket and outside the pocket. The Eagles only had 1 sack, and it was Zach Bond. Josh Sweat had a shot at a sack, wasn't able to get him down. And then I think it was a 3rd down play from in the end zone where he threw, I forget who he threw it to, but he threw it to somebody down the field, like a 30-yard pass play. And boy, are the Eagles lucky that Xavier Legette dropped that ball. Because let's debate this. If Legette catches that ball, scores the touchdown, and it's 23-22 Panthers, do you have faith in the Eagles getting in the field goal range to go for a game-winning field goal?
That's where we were going to find out, because you can't, in that circumstance, we were going to end up with we'd get the ball back with like 45 seconds left on the clock. That was where you were going to get your true test from Jalen Hurts. Can you run a 2-minute drill and get us to a good field goal position? Like you can't be where it's 50+. You had to get like right down to about the 20 to make this work. And we would have had to see him throw the ball, because you wouldn't have been able, even with timeouts, you probably weren't going to be able to lean on the running game or lean on Saquon Barkley in that circumstance. So I almost, in a way, would have liked to have seen that scenario, because we are very lucky that Legette dropped that ball. When I was watching and the TV was on mute, so I did not even know that it was dropped until after. I was like, why are they going backwards? And then I realized, he dropped that ball. But I sat there. I said, no, I had my hands on my head and I thought the game was over there. So that just goes to show how much faith I had if the ball was going back the other way for 40 seconds. We haven't really had to see the Eagles do that yet because they have just been so dominant in the second half that it's never gotten to a point where they've had to do that fourth quarter comeback or that game-winning drive. And we haven't, when was the last time we saw Jalen Hurts have to do a game-winning drive? Yeah, I don't think he's had to do one yet this season. And then, of course, during the
Atlanta game, he had an interception.
Yeah, well, exactly. So, and then during that 10-game winning streak, he might have had to, or during the losing streak last season, he might have had to do it once or twice. But, we weren't really in that position to win many of those games either. So, we haven't really had to watch Jalen Hurts do some of the stuff that some of these great quarterbacks are doing, like Josh Allen and Matthew Stafford, watching them go one-on-one. If the It's a Wrap Sports Network guy was listening, he would love to hear this because Josh Allen and Matthew Stafford put on a show last night. The way they went back and forth, those are guys you can trust to hopefully lead you on that game-winning drive. I don't know if I put Jalen Hurts in that same tier.
I wouldn't put him in the same tier either, but I will say all those yards, all those touchdowns that Josh Allen had, still took an L. Just saying. Now look, Josh Allen is better than Jalen Hurts. He's the MVP favorite right now. He's going to win the MVP unless he falls flat on his face. But all those numbers, he took an L. So, what is the most important stat right now? Wins, right? So, obviously, it would be nice. Do I miss the being able to throw the ball down the field and scoring in 2 or 3 plays with passes instead of dinking and dunking and running your way down the field? Sure. But if Jalen's going to go out there and have 6 touchdowns, but they're going to lose, I'd rather him have 100 yards passing and win. I just want the win. Now, you're not going to be able to probably, as I mentioned before, you're not going to be able to play that way in the playoffs because you're going to have to throw the ball. Again, when's the last time a superstar running back won a Super Bowl? It's been Marshall Faulk, maybe? Superstar running backs, don't necessarily aren't the catalyst to winning Super Bowls. It's always the quarterback. It looks like the Eagles are trying to debunk that this year. We'll see if it happens. But Jalen Hurts does have to improve his game.
Yeah, we've said, can you win by running the ball? Absolutely. Can you necessarily put all the faith in that's going to happen this year when you come up, if you get that matchup, that dream matchup, the Detroit Lions versus, the Philadelphia Eagles? Can you run your way to a victory against against the Detroit Lions? I don't know. Can you run your way to a victory against the Green Bay Packers? I don't know. Can you run your way to a victory against the Bills or the Chiefs? I'm not convinced that you can do that. You're going to have to be able to go to the air and definitely throw for more than 100 yards. Look at most of those matchups against some of those teams. Most of those quarterbacks are throwing 200-plus yards. They have to go to the air. To compete and go pound for pound with the Lions and the Chiefs, not so much this year, but the Lions and the Bills. Look at the Rams and Bills last night. You need to be able to throw the ball. You need to be able to connect, and you need to be able to rack up yards and do things in a hurry. And, I think it'll be interesting this week because I think, the Steelers are going to test and potentially force Jalen Hurts to have to throw the ball because this is a number 4 Russian defense in the league. I get it. We face a number 1 Russian defense and we put them into the ground, the Baltimore Ravens. But could this be, are you going to be able to do that every time you face a top 5 Russian defense? I don't know. I guess we're going to find out this week. If we do it again, maybe we can just march to the Super Bowl and potentially win it on the back of Saquon Barkley.
TJ Watt's a different. We'll talk about this more later this week on Friday, but TJ Watt is a monster. Patrick Queen's a monster. Minkah Fitzpatrick, Joey Porter Jr. That defense is legit. That defense is quick. And Mike Tomlin, my favorite coach in the NFL. If Mike Tomlin, he's not going to get fired. Obviously, he signed an extension. If Mike Tomlin ever became available, I would fire whoever my coach was and hire him on the spot. Like, he is my favorite coach. And watching Hard Knocks last week. So in-season Hard Knocks is the AFC North. Like, just watching it and watching like the segments with him made me love the guy even more. Like, I would love to play for a coach like Mike Tomlin. If he ever became available, I'm firing Nick Sirianni or whoever the Eagles coach is on the spot. I don't care if they just won a Super Bowl, and I'm hiring Mike Tomlin. That's how
I don't
much.
think Mike Tomlin will ever become available.
Well,
I honestly think like he's going to end up going till he's done with the Steelers.
Well, that's what the Steelers do. Like, the Steelers have had 3 coaches in like 80 years, it seems like, or whatever the heck the number is. But yeah, so like it's going to be a much different challenge this week. You have much better players. The Eagles have never beaten Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, at this point in his career, he's not the same old Russell Wilson, but he's better than Bryce Young. That offense in Pittsburgh is better than the Carolina offense. The defense in Pittsburgh is better than the Carolina defense. So, like, if you better not get down 14-0 to Pittsburgh, it'll be a different story than what we've seen over the last 9 weeks.
Yeah, and then I guess back to the game at hand, like if I'm handing out a game ball, like CJ Gardner-Johnson had a great game defensively.
Darius Slay did.
Darius Slay, huge final pass breakup. Cooper DeJean had an uncharacteristically not good game.
Yeah, he got schooled by Adam Thielen.
He did. He got schooled by a veteran wide receiver, experienced slot receiver. Like Adam Thielen is a one of those slot guys. If he was in a different circumstance, if he was in Buffalo, if he was in Kansas City, he'd be going off this year. But instead, he did miss some time, but he's in an offense that runs through a quarterback who was at one point benched this season. So, but Thielen's doing a lot with what he's been given. So, it was kind of like, I mean, 1 sack, that was pretty disappointing. Like, we did have 29 total pressures. Jalen Carter's still a beast, doing his thing. Josh Sweat, whatever, five pressures or whatever. The interior was putting in work. Like, Moro Jomo had 5 pressures. Jalen Carter had 5 pressures. Zach Bond got his 1 sack coming through the interior of that offensive line. So clearly, the guards and center were more of a weak point than the tackles. Because, Nolan Smith, he had an okay game, continuing to improve. Josh Sweat had an okay game, but, he had some pressures, but no real sacks, no real hits on the quarterback. So, it was disappointing. I thought we'd see a bit more, but I mean, the interior it was good to see Ojomo through 21 snaps, get 5 pressures and have a really good game and have a good impact because, he's one of those guys who's probably the future of this interior and who will have a heavy rotation with a guy like Jordan Davis, not playing more than 50% snaps most weeks. So, I mean, just as a final point there, because I think we beat the offense to a pulp. Gardner Johnson, I did not think he was coming back into the game when he went down there. And then he came back into the game. He ended up with an interception, 1 interception away from cashing in on an incentive, by the way. So he had a great game. Zach Bond, I mean, the guys, I know that Howie, like somebody had tweeted out that, Zach Bond is going to be different for Howie Roseman than other linebackers because Zach Bond he lines up everywhere. He does so much. He's not just a linebacker. He is one of your like all around. He can be, like an edge rusher. He can be a rusher. He can be a linebacker. He can drop back in coverage when you need him to do. He's done a little bit of everything for this Eagles team. And he may debunk the whole Howie Roseman doesn't pay linebackers. And at this point, the focus is on the season. So for the people who are sitting there wanting an extension done with any player at this point in the season, you're not going to see Howie do it. The focus is get to the playoffs, get where you want to be seated. Hopefully you still have a chance at the 1 seed. Hopefully Minnesota helps us with that. But otherwise, no one's getting their extension now. He would have been giving it out earlier. We've seen it. The in-season extensions, they tend to happen by about the trade deadline or before the trade deadline. This late in the season, they're focused on each game, getting to the playoffs, making that Super Bowl run. So it'll be interesting to see, but like the defense was still good. There's just some guys who, typically did not have the best of games. Jordan Davis had an okay game. Milton Williams, okay. Tristan McCullum did his best at the safety position with Reed Blankenship out. It wasn't the best performance from the defense, but there were some standout performers as always. So,
yeah, and it's good that they kind of happened this week, because now Vic Fangio this week in practice can kind of point out all the flaws, point out all the mistakes, and they work on them this week going up again against a better defensive team or a better offensive team in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jordan Davis also didn't really show up. And you mentioned how much of a beast Jalen Hurts was. He didn't have any help. So somebody's going to have to help him on that defensive line, because nobody helped him this week. And you're going to have to get after Russell Wilson. And he likes to get rid of the ball quickly, and he will if George Pickens plays this week. They're going to want to run the ball with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, Pat Freiermuth at tight end. It's going to be a good test for the defense.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting to see what happens this week as we roll towards it. I know, obviously, we knew we weren't going to talk crazy about this Carolina Panthers-Eagles matchup. It was an ugly game to watch. It ended up being even uglier. Everything about the most part aspects of the Eagles, especially offensively, beyond Saquon Barkley. And then Brandon Graham, of course, derailed our show completely because he forced us to have a 20-minute conversation about what he said.
Conversation.
But yeah, we look to Friday when we preview the Steelers game, and we look
crossing
to
my fingers. I'll be there on Sunday.
Let's hope. We need a Kelly Green showing, because I can't. I'm up here in Canada. I can't be showing unless they come up here and play a game in Canada just for fun.
We got to get you down to Philly for a game one year.
Definitely. So if LJ makes it, make sure you say hi, and he'll tell you to give us a follow. But
we assume you're probable.
Great point about Bond changing how his views on linebackers.
Well, Saquon changed his views on running back, so who knows?
Yeah,
that
might be all it takes.
I did want Patrick Queen since he was available. That's what I wanted. Nobody, again, when we signed Zach Bond, I thought it was just the special teams guy, kind of a depth player, but he's turned into an all-pro linebacker, and Vic Fangio does that. He did it for Andrew Van Ginkel last year. With the Dolphins, that's what he does with guys. So what a get by Howie and the Eagles front office staff to bring in Zach Bond, and then great job by Vic Fangio coaching him up and getting him to be the all pro player that he's been so far. All right, the Eagles win 22-16. They are 11-2, clinched a playoff berth for the fourth consecutive year under Nick Sirianni. And with a win this week, if I'm not mistaken, they clinched the NFC East. I think that's how it works, potentially.
I believe, yeah. Which is crazy to think, because up until 4 weeks ago,
Christmas.
Up until 4 weeks ago, we weren't even leading the division. Right? So it's crazy to think that we're now at the point of discussion where we might clinch the division. By the way, wild to think it for the 20th straight season, there will not be a repeat NFC
the last time
champion.
It was the Eagles in 03 and 04.
That's so crazy to think about every year. Mm-hmm. This week, I tweeted it this morning. With our win, we ensured Dallas can't win the NFCs. It's crazy that we're going 20 straight years without a same division winner.
That never happens. I mean, the Chiefs just won the AFC West for their 9th straight year, I think. The Bills just won the AFC East for the 5th straight year or something like that. All these other divisions just have winners after winners, same winners after same winners after same winners. And the Eagles and the Cowboys and the Commanders and the Giants just can't figure it out. Hopefully it's the Eagles this year and next year.
They're just not meant to be those dynasty creating teams in the NFC East, apparently. Used to be, way back. But Eagles, they don't seem to be that way anymore.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in to this edition of the Victory Green Hour. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJRL54. And follow the Eagles Pinpool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcast at Eagles Pinpool Network. Like and subscribe to the Eagles Pinpool Network. For Connor, I'm LJ. Thank you for tuning in to the Kelly Green Hour.